Now listen up.
Insights EDU 2025 is almost here. Join us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management event of the year.
I like that.
Imagine 3 action-packed days filled with game-changing insights, real-world case studies, and a hands-on workshop designed to transform your marketing strategy and boost your program enrollment. Learn from speakers at Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the nation. Network with industry leaders, exchange ideas, and discover the tools to drive real results. This is your opportunity to stay ahead of the competition and meet the demands of today's modern learners. Don't wait, spots are filling fast. Mark your calendar, rally your team, and head to insightsedu.com to register now. The era of the modern learner is here, and you need to be part of it. We'll see you in New Orleans.
Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you here on another episode. We are getting really, really close to 1,000 episodes of this podcast I think we're actually going to hit 1,000 episodes before we hit our 5-year anniversary. If you can, if you think about that, I podcast every single day at 12 Central every day, unless something I have to cancel because I'm sick or the kids are home or the guest sometimes has trouble, but almost every day, Monday through Friday, throughout the entire year. That's how much content there is out there in our industry, in education and higher education, that we do not talk enough about. Leaders, topics, issues. And, we're primarily interviewing higher education leaders, but you think about K-12, you think about how many people and the stories that exist within K-12 education and the leaders that are like leading cities, gigantic budgets, amounts of people affecting the minds of children. The job of a teacher, in my mind, is the most important job in the world. And probably for the amount of work and the impact a teacher has, one of the jobs that is ripe for increased pay. And I truly believe that, and that's my personal opinion. I think teachers could make more than anybody in the world, and it would still be worth it because of their handle of our kids. So educators have a special place here at the EdUp Experience, and we have tracked down an educator today that is leading a massive organization. And I'm going to get him on the mic because I think we're going to get him on right now. I'm not going to do any more self-promotion that I do because he's got a lot to say. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Mike Miles. He's the superintendent for the Houston Independent School District. Mike, welcome to the mic. How are you?
Thanks. I'm doing fine. Thanks for inviting me.
I set that up on purpose, and that you're leading just a massive organization. And I would really, as we level set for our audience, when we say Houston Independent School District, give us the scope of this organization.
So we have just shy of 180,000 students. We have about 25,000 employees. 10,640 of them are teachers. And so that gives you some sense of the scale. The budget's $2.1 billion. So, yeah.
$2.1 billion?
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, I should say so. That's quite a lot to keep track of. If you're because then you have all the infrastructure that goes along with that, right? You have auxiliary services, and you've got campuses, and you've got buildings and leases or ownership and taxes and the number of departments to serve all those auxiliary functions. But of course, students being your key stakeholder.
That's
and
right.
Student success being the ultimate outcome. What's going on in K-12 education these days? Give us a broad stroke, 30,000-foot view. What's on your mind as a superintendent?
Yeah, 30,000-foot view is American public education system is struggling. As a education system across the nation, especially for medium and large urban districts, we as a profession have not been able to close the achievement gap. So, and that means over the last 20 years, the nation's report card, the NAEP, the data from that shows that the achievement gap is still about the same. We moved it just a little bit prior to COVID, and then COVID kind of wiped out the increase or the improvement, which was only 2 or 3 percentage points anyway. And we're not preparing kids for a different world and environment. Most of the districts look the same as they did 20 years ago. The classrooms look the same as they did 20 years ago. And so, or at least the instruction is the same as it was 20 years ago. And we need a different way of operating. So I'm proud to be an educator. I love teachers. I love principals. I train principals a lot. But I can say, as a person who's been in this profession, we need to really do some bold, dramatic reforms.
Are the reforms political reforms? Are they dollars and cents funding reforms? Are they mindset reforms? Like, we got to teach a different way. We need, where in the line do those reforms have the biggest impact?
Yeah, Joe, thanks for framing it in a systemic way, because the answer to your question is that we have to look at it like a system. And the number one problem that the American public education system has faced over the last 2 or 3 decades is that reformers have done piecemeal, incremental reform. And piecemeal, incremental reform, we know now, does not. Yes, it'll work for a school here or there because they can do more than just piecemeal. And yes, there are some smaller systems that are doing well. But on the whole, medium and large urban school system, Houston is the 8th largest in the country, are not doing well because they have tried piecemeal incremental reform, and that hasn't worked. We need a different way of operating, to answer your question, more than we need money. Now, I hope your listeners don't hear that.
I mean, you don't need money.
That's right. Exactly. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have more money, but over the last 3 decades, we've thrown people and money at the problem. And that we didn't get our bang for our buck because we're not operating effectively. So money is not the first thing to look at, even though it's critically important. So I hope people don't hear that, well, we don't need resources, we don't need money. I didn't say that. But we have to get away from this notion that we can't do anything different unless we get more money. That's a path. That's a rabbit hole. That's a path you don't want to go down. So that's the challenge. And Houston is doing it differently. We are creating a different public education system. And if you want to, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I want to push pause on that because that's a great lead up. But and you talk about always need more money. There's probably a list of 100 things that you always want to do on any given day.
Right.
But if you look at the resources that you have and you think about operating differently, the hardest question to ask is, what can we stop doing so that we free up the resources to do this? And a lot of those will say, well, if we had more money, we'd do this. And the challenging part is changing their mindset to go, well, we have to stop doing this, and maybe this isn't effective. So there's going to be some consequences of stopping to do this. But if we start doing this, we're going to make up for those consequences and more. That's really hard because then you're relying on our individual change, and we have a lot of inertia to change.
That's exactly right. And there's a lot of challenge that comes with any sort of change, and so you use the word consequences, intended and unintended,
exactly,
with every change. And so people are wary of changing the way we operate especially if there aren't proof points. And then people are also wary of bold reform because we went through that battle, 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, we had an appetite in the country for bold reforms. I can mention a lot of names you probably know. Michelle Rhee in D.C., John Daisy and in Los Angeles. We had Cammie Anderson in Newark. We had Dwight Jones in Nevada, in Las Vegas. We had Chris Barbick in Tennessee. I was in Dallas. We had a number of other people who were reformers doing both things. We had support and money from some of the bigger funders, Bill and Melinda Gates, Bezos, and others, Reed Hastings, and they still contribute, but mostly to other causes now, not as much to education. They still do that too, so I don't want to discredit them, but there's certainly less money coming into the big reform movements. And now you see that hardly any large urban district has a reformer like that. And the ones I just mentioned they had short-lived superintendencies, and the reform movement has stalled.
Look at this.
What's that? Yeah. The reform movement has stalled, and those folks I mentioned did some good things. Don't get me wrong, but basically the districts have kind of rubber banded back to what they were before.
So you set the stage now. So less bold reformers, but Houston's doing things differently. You said that those are your words, that you're looking at different business model innovation. Talk a little bit about what's going on in the Houston district that gives you confidence for the future.
Yeah. So I got to give you a little bit of a preamble. I've got to give you a little bit of context.
Sure.
Because one of the challenges, it's only one of several, is governance systems in the American public education system. How we are managed and governed by an elected board. That's a challenge. But Houston was taken over a year ago by the Texas Education Agency for having several problems, but failing schools and also not complying with SPED law, either state or national. So a number of failing schools without doing anything about it. They also had some governance challenges. And so the state of Texas took them over and appointed me as the superintendent.
Smart move.
Yeah, well, you don't go polling the people around here. Maybe might get a good
polling here at the EdUp experience.
Okay, all right, good. And a board of managers. So appointed a board of managers, and the charge is to turn around the school district and eventually bring back the elected board as soon as we can. The biggest charge is bring all the D and F campuses out of that rating into an A, B, or C rating. So no D or F campuses. Now we had, at the start of last school year, we had 121 D and F campuses out of 274 schools. So a significant number, and hence...
You say that's a lot of upside. It's a lot of upside, Mike.
Right. So a lot of work to do, right? A lot of work to do. Anyway, so that already puts Houston kind of in a different situation, right? Both good and bad. The good is that we have a board of managers who can be more focused, not on getting reelected, but on just kid issues, student focus.
Yeah.
And that there's something to be said for that. That's a huge plus. On the downside, you already have a lot of opposition from the community who believes that the intervention was undemocratic. And so politics, I mean, looking at it from a political lens, some of those folks do. You have a Republican governor, and they think it's related to, some nefarious notion of, power or control, which it's not. I have one charge, and that is help the kids of HISD get higher proficiency and get prepared for year 2035 world and workplace. That's it. That's the only. No one pushes me to do anything else. I wouldn't do anything else as a superintendent. So that's the context by which we're working. Now, the more operational change or context is, I told you that incremental piecemeal reform doesn't work. So then the obvious question is, what would work, and what could we bring to Houston that works?
I'm glad I asked.
I believe the only thing that will work systemically is whole-scale systemic reform. What that means is doing large-scale, far-reaching, comprehensive reforms, plural, all at one time, system-wide. Now, you can't build a plane while you're flying the plane, so the district existed and has the system it has. So how can you do this? And the way we're doing it is we took a subset of schools. In fact, I came in thinking we'd just do 28 schools, so 10% of the district, and fundamentally change how we staff, how we pay the teachers, how the curriculum works, how we coach instruction, how we hire, how we operate the instructional model, all of that, all at one time.
I like your style, dude.
So 28 schools, but it quickly became 85 because several principals wanted in.
That was my question. It became 85 because you expanded, or somebody said, well, why didn't I get to be one of those? I want in this.
We talked about split screen, right? Where you just take a portion of the district, change. That phrase comes from Ted Koldery's work, split screen strategy. So that means taking a part of a district or an organization, fundamentally changing that, and the rest of the district you try to improve over time, but you don't do whole-scale systemic reform there. So we took 28 schools. A lot of principals liked the supports that came with this notion of these 28 schools. We call those schools the New Education System Schools, NES schools. So when the principals in training heard about these 28 schools, what that meant, what the instruction model would be, but also the supports like teacher apprentices, learning coaches. We make the copies for the teacher. The curriculum is all set, the PowerPoint, the text material, the lesson objective, the demonstration of learning, all that's prepared for the teacher, copied for the teacher by a copy clerk. Teachers are well-trained, well-coached. Their salary is $15,000 to $20,000 more than the average salary in the district. So of course, other schools wanted it. So they volunteered. 57, so now 85 schools are in this. What the first year was 85 schools, 85 NES schools. This year, the second year, there are 130 NES schools, again, out of 274. So almost half the district is NES.
I like not that you did this on purpose, but if I was a principal of a school and I'm on the outside of the new education system, I'd be going, well, am I now part of the old education system?
You just made the list!
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go! Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Well, yeah,
To be old, I want to be new. I'd be thinking that if it were me.
well, that wasn't purposeful or intentional. But to be fair, there were many schools and still some schools that want no part of the NES because one of the challenges that's unique to Houston is that they've had a history of autonomy, and that's good and bad, right? 274 different schools, no unifying vision, no unifying sense of what high quality instruction was, no unifying curriculum. When I got 32 different curricula for English language arts, 32 different.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. You can't have economies of scale with regard to training, with regard to purchasing, and that level of autonomy baked in inequity, and that is a huge. We can talk about that next, but that's a huge issue in our profession, as you know. But it was a huge issue and continues to be something we work on here in Houston. So now we have 130 schools. A lot of schools didn't want to be in it because you lose your autonomy. But I'm telling you, if you were to talk to the principals of the NES schools, the 85, and now it's 130, they're going to tell you almost to a person that it's been a great thing for their schools. I think we went from 66 D&F campuses among those 85, and now there are only 14.
Outstanding.
And in the district as a whole, we went from 121 D and F campuses to 40.
Wow.
And we went from 93 A and B campuses to 170. So we remarkably moved the district in just 1 year.
Yeah.
In just 1 year.
Go back to the point about building in inequity. I think you said it baked in it. Let me try that again.
Yes.
Baked in inequity because of the differing curriculums, because you didn't have economies of scale. How did it do that? How does it do that?
Yeah. So if you're going to address inequity, then what that invariably means is you have to provide greater resources to the greater need. So if kids are behind academically, really reading at if a school has low proficiency levels, then you might have to push resources there like an interventionist. And more important than an interventionist, you might have to put your highest performing teachers, you need to put your highest performing teachers with your lowest performing students. Right. I mean, my colleagues prior to me coming here, my colleagues, I've always said to them, look, don't talk to me about equity. You're just talking if you have not moved your highest performing teachers to your lowest performing students. If you haven't done that, then you're just playing at, addressing inequity. Because the biggest resource is the teacher. As you mentioned earlier, that's an effective teacher is the number one variable in student academic achievement and the quality of their instruction. So invariably, you're going to need to move teachers or other resources. You might need more programming. Higher performing campuses are able to raise outside money, and so their programming is always, more significant. The district itself put more money, gave a magnet subsidy to schools, and that's a good thing. But what it did is it gave the magnet subsidy more money to the magnet schools that had fewer kids who were low proficiency, and so that not redistributing resources because you have 274 autonomous schools, giving everybody the same amount is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because if you're going to give everybody the same amount because they're all autonomous and they can do the programming they want, then you have less ability to shift resources to the need. And so that's why, and again, so one of the challenges we faced last year is we had to do this reform, this whole-scale systemic reform, without diminishing the programming at the schools that are doing well, because that's the last thing you want to do, right? The district was actually a tale of two systems. One, I mean, Houston has some of the best performing schools in the nation. It has some of our magnet programming schools and other schools, traditional program schools, and you can find them in the U.S. News and World Report in the top 100 schools. We always have a handful in those reports, in the top 100 schools in Texas, et cetera. But it's a tale of two systems because while we have 85 of those A and B schools, or 90 A and B rated schools last year, we had 121 DNF schools,
Right,
and a lot of C schools, C rated schools that are struggling. So the way we did that was we cut a lot of central office overhead and really decreased the size of central office, decrease the number of vendors, purchase services is a phrase we use in the profession, purchase services, and put that money towards the resources that the NES schools received.
interesting. I mean, it really is fascinating to see the improvement in 1 year. I mean, obviously that's what you're going for. Now you're in a tale of two cities. You've got performance going up in one area, and you have another large chunk of schools that you've got to move in the right direction and figure out a strategic plan to do that, which I'm sure is on your mind.
Yeah, Joe, you're hitting all the right. I mean, it's as if you're here.
I understand inertia in higher education, and I bet you it's very similar.
So, I mean, again, to be fair, we want to make sure that the A and B schools are not left alone per se, but are able to do good work and sustain the work that's already benefiting kids, right?
Yeah.
So they don't need the NES program, which is a highly, it's not scripted, but there's a template for it, meaning we do direct instruction and we do differentiated instruction and we do it in a certain way. So A and B schools don't need to do that. The challenge is that some of your lower, your C schools and the populations of kids, even in B-rated schools or in some A-rated schools, where there's an achievement gap.
Yeah.
And so the way we approach that is looking at the quality of instruction and requiring the improvement of the quality of instruction everywhere, and focusing this year a flashlight on minority achievement gap, or the achievement gaps and special ed gaps. So that's how we're approaching it, while allowing the A and B schools to really operate the way they've always operated.
It really is it's a boy, you got to write a book about this. I feel like, not to give you more work, but this is a massive undertaking. And then you start to think about the cultural implications of something like this. I'm NES and you're not. And, the management of that, how if the success breeds opportunity for the schools that aren't in NES and they see the results and go, there's just no choice. We have to do this. I mean, at least that's what you would hope with a pilot that grows, right? That's kind of what you ran almost, was a pilot.
Yeah.
And then somebody goes, I need to be in that. And you hope that over time, hopefully shorter than you hope, schools will go, we see the benefit of this, right?
And Joe, that's kind of what we did this year. It was 85.
Yeah.
And so back in the spring, we said, okay, which schools will we add next year? And it was two things. We had about 21 or 22 schools that were D and F rated, that we said, hey, you all have to, no, they were F rated and what we call low D. And we said, those 22 schools, you have to be in NES. So that would have brought us to 120 schools or so. And then we said, okay, if you are a C-rated school or a high D, you can opt in. And so we had another 23 or so schools opt in, and that's why we now have 130.
So you're the one taking away all my control, all my personal control, right? Like, I mean, that's the way people will feel when you have a highly customized, configured campus. It's an individual entity, and then you have to change it. Well, there's going to be great inertia. Then you start to look at the technology advancements around you, like artificial intelligence and career and technical training and all these things that are happening around you. And you go, there's just no choice. Eventually, we have to be in a place where we can have these technologies and benefit from the ability to scale. But we can't do that if we're highly customized, right? I mean, that's going to be the ultimate barrier for schools that are resistant to changes. They step further and further away from getting to change easily.
Yeah, there's a balance there somewhere, and you're right. There's a healthy tension between innovation and autonomy on one side, and then less autonomy or more directed instructional practices on the other. And we think the balance is it's not mutually exclusive. But when the kids when only 20% of your kids can read at grade level.
Yeah.
I think you have to put in the best instructional practices. You have to put in the sorts of reforms that we know work. And so that's what we did with the 85 schools. And that's why there's so much improvement in the NES schools. In those NES schools, overall, the reading increase in reading proficiency and the increase in math proficiency, grades 3 through 8, was the highest the state of Texas ever saw on any of their, on the state exam since the history. The increase. Now, you go from 20% proficient, and even if you increase it 10% like we did in some grades, we're still only at 30%. So we've got a long way to go. I'm not saying we're done, or that that now all the schools are proficient. No, it's the increase in proficiency, and if we can do that year after year, our goal this next year is now to beat the state average in math and reading. In just 2 years, we would have gone from way behind the state average to the state average in just 2 years. That's what we're hoping to do. So year after year, if we have these increases, then we will beat the state average, and then we can go after the national average in proficiency.
Let's talk about some practical things that are happening in education in general. One of those is AI in public education. I kind of made reference to it, but artificial intelligence in public ed, just like higher ed, teachers all over are struggling with it, adopting it, understanding it. Should I use it? Can I use it? Are students using it? How do I tell? How does a superintendent of a massive school district rationalize artificial intelligence and what we should be doing as educators with it, how to use it, how to think about it?
Yeah. So, sometimes you just have to start.
Yeah, good point.
And be okay with the little messiness. So that's what we've done. So, I've been thinking about technology and artificial intelligence for a while, as the leader of a charter network prior to coming to Houston. And we started in that charter network, and I brought it to Houston, the Art of Thinking course. Art of Thinking, we're now, Houston is the only large urban district that I know of that requires an Art of Thinking course in the NES schools, 130 schools, 3 times a week, 90 minutes each time, grades 3 through 10, and it covers information literacy, problem solving, and critical thinking.
Nice.
And we've done that. We did it last year. We'll do it again this year. We are doing it again this year. And the reason why it's important is I believe, and it intersects artificial intelligence, but I believe that one of the things we have to do is prepare our kids for a different world and workplace. Managing information in an information age should have always started with critical thinking, information literacy, problem solving, those sorts of skills. And I know, you look very young to me, Joe.
Well, thank you, sir.
But if you were around in education 15 years ago, you will know that we tried to infuse critical thinking skills. There was a big movement to infuse critical thinking skills in the other subjects, language arts, math, science. And that was a short-lived experiment because teachers across the nation said to me, as a principal at the time in Fountain, Colorado, and teacher said, Mr. Miles, it's all I can do to teach kids proportions. And you want me to do what? Teach them what? It's all I can do to get my kids to write, complete sentences. And you want me to do what? I don't even know how to teach critical thinking. I don't even know what it means. So you know what? I got hired as a language arts teacher. This is what I'm doing. And the state standards, et cetera. So that's why it didn't go very far.
Yeah.
And that's why 7 years or 8 years ago now, I started the Art of Thinking course in the charter network that I ran. And lo and behold, 3 states last year passed legislation to require information literacy in their coursework. California, New Jersey, Delaware. And I think that's going to grow because people are seeing that kids need information literacy. Now, artificial intelligence, how does it intersect? Artificial intelligence will be better utilized and understood by kids, by students and graduates if they can think critically. In order to use artificial intelligence well now, you kind of have to know the parameters or what we call prompt engineering. And so if you're not thinking critically, you don't know what parameters to put on your questionings or how to change your prompt, that makes it harder. It's not as simple as just asking, AI, ChatGPT a question and then, having an answer. You have to understand the answer in a context. So I think critical thinking is going to help there. As far as HIC, we started right away last year to pull a committee together from the community to help us think through artificial intelligence in the business world, in marketing, and we got this committee together to help us with our AI policy and our AI course. So right now, today, we have a artificial intelligence elective that we put in every high school.
Nice.
So that kids can start to learn how to use artificial intelligence in the workplace. We have workshops for teachers. We had over the summer, we have a few more lined up for teachers to use AI in the workplace, in schools. We use, the Microsoft version of AI in our, Copilot, thank you. In
Artificial intelligence.
Right. in our Windows programming. And so that's available to all teachers now. And, we built the proper firewalls and stuff like that, so that we protect information. We have a draft policy that we're already using around AI. And part of that was borrowed from others that are also, trying to do this work, because you have to have safety protocols and things in place. So we're already doing that. We've also added 4 programs of study, and in every high school, they have to choose 2 to 4. that are more geared to year 2035 and better served by technology and artificial intelligence. Anyway, we're not waiting. We know it's going to be, the class that we put together, the elective, is not going to be perfect, but we know that it's important.
Well, Mike, this has been an incredible episode of the EdUp Experience. I value the insights that you've provided. To hear from you, it's really amazing the work that you're doing. So, take out your crystal ball for a second. Tell us what you see for the future of education.
So when we talk about the future of education, I've said this is the last generation of kids in school before the skills gap is locked in. And what I mean by that is that I believe our workplace and workforce are changing quickly, that high-skilled jobs will remain, and there'll be some more and different high-skilled jobs. But I think middle-skilled jobs will be leaving as they have, and more low-skilled jobs will be created, partly brought on by artificial intelligence, but this has been happening already for the last decade. What that means for education is that not only do we in public education have to teach kids how to read, write, and do math and science, we also have to prepare them for a different world and workplace, and we have to provide them with higher skills, more complex thinking. And so that is the role that education has to play. And it's hard enough for many districts just to do reading, writing, math, and science, and now we have to do both. So if we do not do some bold things, operate differently, change the status quo, and work with a sense of urgency, we're not going to be ready. I think we're already too late in many cases, but there's hope. Houston is providing a proof point, and I hope others will provide proof points of how we can not only close the achievement gap, but also provide students with more skills that will prepare them for a world of work after high school.
Well, there you have it, everybody. An incredible, amazing, fantastic, outstanding, I can't think of enough words to describe this episode of the EdUp Experience with our guest. No, he's your guest. He is Mike Miles. He's the superintendent of Houston Independent School District, and he is doing incredible work. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp.
Attention, higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go! Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.